Right. Good evening. So today we have the webinar session on the introduction on systematic literature review conducted by Dr. Priyashantha. Before we start, let me briefly introduce Dr. Priyashantha. Dr. Priyashantha is a senior lecturer at the Department of Human Resource Management at the Faculty of Management and Finance at University of Ruhuna. So he's a product of the Faculty of Management and Finance of University of Ruhuna, and he has earned his PhD from University of California and one master's from in international management from the University of Edgar, Norway, and another master's in labor studies from Faculty of Graduate Studies, University of Colombo. And actually, he has awarded Young HR Minds Award at the International HR Conference organized by the Institute of Personnel Management. And his research and publication areas are gender stereotypes change and work-family conflicts, disruptive HR and technologies, and HR functions. He has presented many papers at local and international conferences, and as far as I know, he's the best resource person for systematic literature review, especially using the Prisma methodology. And he has over 15 publications in international peer-reviewed journals in popular indexing and rankings, such as SSCI, Scopus, and all that. Now he is actually now serving as the peer reviewer for internationally indexed journals such as Cogent Economics and Finance and Psychology Research and Behavior Management, BMG Open, Career Development, and so on. So I believe he's the right person to talk about systematic literature review to you all. So I'm not going to take a lot of time. I'm going to invite Dr. Priyashantha to continue the session today.
Thank you, Mr. Sipita, and the Department of Management of Gamha Vikramarajchi University of Indigenous Medicine. And thank you so much for you all for inviting me for this session. And actually, so 1 or 2 weeks before, since they invited me, and thank you for the invitation. Right, so we just without wasting much time, we can, because I have been given only 1 hour session. It's only 1 hour to conduct this basically this is an awareness session in order to give the entire methodology. I will take nearly more than 20 hours to complete to give an overall knowledge about this methodology. So within 1 hour, I'm trying my best to give an overview, basic understanding, awareness that there are this kind of methodology, right? So, and so what are the main ingredients of this method and how it can be basically conducted for your research and how it can be used basically for your research. Since this is emerging and becoming a trendy area these days with the latest technologies, and there are so many software coming, emerging, and evolving day by day. So therefore, so this area is highly affected by the technology, and so therefore with AI basically. So therefore, so this must be known by you, and so once you know this, basically you will be able to improve other things, basically understanding about once you have this, then you will find more materials. There are so many materials available on YouTube and other media. So so you will try, I believe you will try your best to find more materials to have a thorough understanding about this, and later on I will tell you how to, and more guided videos and how to use smoke guided videos and how to use the programs are normally conducted by me, and basically I will aware you how so you can get those sources and keep in touch with those sources, right? So my topic today basically on systematic literature review. So how I believe you all can. Is it visible?
Yes, we can see that.
Right. Right. Systematic. The title is basically Systematic Literature Review, commonly known as SLR, with bibliometric analysis, a way of manuscript writing with Prisma. So basically, I'm focused write an article. I believe most of the participants are from the academic staff. Is there any student, Mrs. Sister, in the class in this session? Are there any students?
I don't see any students so far. They might be joining. Yes, they might.
Right. So then I believe most of the participants are from academic staff. More, I can focus on writing how to write an article rather than just there is no any student. Then basically I can focus on how this methodology can be used for the students writing their dissertations and how to write the literature review chapter. So basically, within this, since there are no students, my focus is basically uh, writing an article on this, how to write an article, uh, standalone research or standalone review study, how to conduct a standalone review study, and how to publish it, right? So that's my focus. So basically, there are more tech analysis are there, but on bibliometric analysis with Prisma. So what is Prisma and what is bibliometric analysis? I will tell you later on what it is and what are they. Right. So for doing this, basically to do the systematic literature review, because you need to have the database access login, because you need to download the articles, because this is a secondary information, already published data. So articles in the sense that already published data, published research studies. So you need to download all these published research studies from the databases, right? So then you must have the database access login, because bibliometric information, so all the databases currently available, famous databases like Scoopers and Web of Science, providing biometric information uh, about their article, about the published research from the database itself. Because from the database itself, we can download the articles. Along with the downloading articles, we can get the bibliometric information of all these articles, right? So in a separate file, in a separate file format. Get that we must have those database bibliometric retrieve files to input the softwares that we are going to use to run the bibliometric analysis. In that case, so we must have the database access logging. So these two are paid databases, but unfortunately nowadays we don't have paid database access, so therefore we can't have the access logging. So we don't normally go to the databases due to the restrictions, because we have not been provided any database access nowadays with this current situation. None of the universities that given any database access. So therefore, how we can use how we can log in to these databases and how we can use the bibliometric data available in database. So that's the main limitation. Then I found another method to replace these databases. We can use the Google data, right? Normally, as we know, we are supposed to we are normally searching articles or relevant literature through the Google, right? So Google Scholar. So then using Google Scholar, how we can download bibliometric information relevant to the published research. So will be taught in this session. And so basically, I'm going to use those Google data. I'm going to teach you how you can use the Google data, Google Scholar data. In other words, Google Scholar bibliometric information to do a systematic literature review. For that, you need to have a reference manager software, basically Mendeley, Zotero. So you need to have both, and there are videos, and if, sometimes you may be using the Zotero or to manage your references in your research activities. So if not, you can, I have provided on this handout some link, YouTube link on how to install the Zotero and how to work with Zotero, and how to install Mendeley and how to work with Mendeley. So all these videos are in my YouTube channel. You can subscribe and you can download and you can watch. These are basically how to install reference management software and how to use with how to manage references with them basically. And today I'm going to tell you how to use these two reference management software uh, to do your systematic literature review, right? Using basically in order to download the Google bibliometric information, Google Scholar bibliometric information, you can simply use Zotero or Mendeley software. And then based on that, then finally you can create a separate file, a bibliometric file that can be used for your systematic literature review analysis software, right? So watch this video and download. If you are not using, download this software, then try to. I'm not going to teach you how to use and how to download and how to use reference management software, right? So basically, you can watch, learn how to use them with these videos. And so I have provided some recommended articles that I have published recently in the last year. During the last 2 years, I was able to publish more than 15 articles on this basically. Please remember, so normally if you take a empirical study, if you are going to publish, if you are going to do an empirical study, so normally it will take nearly 1 month, 6 months, nearly at least more than 3 months, right? Minimum 3 months will be taken for that. But remember, basically for a systematic literature review, will take maximum 2 weeks. Maximum 2 weeks, right? If you are working nearly 4 to 5 hours a day, maximum, you will take 2 weeks time to finish an article, right? To finish a systematic review study. So because so many softwares are there, so many information data available already, and simply you can download the data and all these data into the software, then run the analysis and finally interpret the results and write the report, right? So for all these processes, you will take maximum 2 weeks, right? So then so when you do a systematic literature review, so believe me, you will can accelerate your so you can increase your publications within a shorter time period when you use a systematic literature review. So these are the evidences that I have published So you can take those articles downloaded, and you can refer how to write an article and write. So just recommending you to use these articles, guidelines for your systematic literature reviews. And what is reviewing the literature basically? As you know, reviewing is an essential feature of academic research. As you know, so once the problem, a title or a problem for research, for a research study identified, then you need to justify the problem, right? So once a research problem is identified, relating to the problem, you need to find out the current knowledge, right? Existing knowledge. And so when there is a gap, when there is a problem exists already, so which means that the gaps prevailing. If there are no gaps in knowledge, so the problem is over. Problem can already be solved. So right. So when the problem really exists, still existing, then which means that there are knowledge gaps, right? There are practical gaps, empirical gaps, right? So in that case, that's why you are taking this problem to investigate, basically to investigate, find the solutions for that problem. So if there is a problem prevailing, existing, then so obviously, so there must be a knowledge gap, or there must be a contextual gap, or there must be a empirical gap, right? So those gaps need to be found. Basically, you find out where the gaps prevails relating to your problem, and gaps need to be justified, right? And gaps need to be justified with proper evidences. And for that, what you need to do is to review the current knowledge. Knowledge normally existed in the knowledge bases, and you need to access those knowledge, basically reviewing in the sense that appraising the current knowledge, right? So by reviewing the relevant literature, we can understand the breadth and depth of the existing body of work and identify gaps to explore. Basically, in a literature review, what we do is to review in the sense that basically you can understand the depth, breadth, and the depth of the existing body of knowledge. When you review, when you understand the breadth and depth of the existing, help you to identify the gaps, right? To explore further. So for that, so simply in other words, reviewing in other words, the current knowledge in breadth, understanding the breadth and depth. For understanding the breadth and depth, what you need to do, you need to summarize, you need to analyze, and you need to synthesize the current knowledge, right? So and also in a review, we can evaluate the validity and quality of the existing work against a criterion to reveal weaknesses, inconsistencies, or contradictions. For example, you have a current knowledge, you can understand as a weakness, or what are the strengths on it, and what are their inconsistencies, and whether there is a contradiction with the theory, right? So reviewing in the sense that basically you can summarize, analyze, synthesize. So that summary, analysis, and synthesis help you to evaluate the validity of the current work, existing knowledge, right? So in that way, you can understand whether there is any weakness of the existing knowledge, whether there are any inconsistencies, whether there are inconsistencies about the current knowledge, or whether there are any contradictions, right? So if there is let's say, for example, if there is a contradiction, so in the sense that contradictions means that there is a gap on the current knowledge. Say that if there is any inconsistency with the inconsistency of the current knowledge, right? So then it reveals a gap, right? So basically, reviewing literature help us to understand the gaps. In short, as a common thing, or common in common terms, basically, so we can understand the gaps, right? So basically, systematic literature reviews are based on two forms. One is background review for an empirical study, and the other one is standalone review, right? So what is a background review? Once your problem is identified for your research, you need to do a background review. So you must go to the knowledge bases, and you need to find out what is prevailing uh, in the knowledge bases relating to the current problem. So which means that once the problem is there, and why the problem has happened, and so what are the main ingredients of the problem, what are the main causes, and what are the main outcomes, and how the problem is defined. So for all these, you need to refer the current knowledge relating to the problem. For that, you need to access the knowledge bases. So, and in the knowledge bases, when you access the knowledge bases, you simply can understand whether there is a gap. Because once the problem existing, then obviously you can understand whether there is simply you can understand that there is a gap, because problem exists uh, due to the inability to find out the solution. So if there are to address the problem is no longer existent, right? So problem still existing due to the lack of the knowledge. So because of the lack of the knowledge relating to that problem already existing, right? So therefore, simply gaps you can identify, right? And gaps need to be filled by your research. Then you simply need to understand what are the gaps, right? So background review basically help you to identify the gap. And what is then standalone review? So this review attempts to make a sense of existing literature through the aggregation, interpretation, explanation, or integration of existing research. So it is kind of a background research, but background research can be published as a separate journal article or as a separate research, because literature review is a kind of a research that you are doing, right? So you simply develop a problem, a research question based on the research question. So for the basically I'm talking about the literature review, right? So for the literature review itself, you can develop a problem statement and research questions and research objectives, right? So basically, then based on you can collect the data, you can access the knowledge bases and collect some already published articles, and what has been highlighted and what has not been highlighted can be reviewed, right? So in those set of articles, and simply your findings, gaps you identify can be published as a separate journal article, separate research article, right? So that is known as standalone piece. Journal article. Simply, you are supposed to do a background research, background literature review, and that is the first way of literature reviews, and that can be published in a separate article, research article. So that is the second form of literature reviews, right? So there are basically two forms, and so even though there are two forms, nowadays various for example, when it comes to the second one, so normally you are doing the background review, and background review can be done in a systematic way, or background review can be done in a narrative way, in a subjective way. So that is review, right? So when you do the background review in a systematic way, using the scientific approach or structured approach, using quantitative techniques, mathematical techniques, systematic techniques, following a rigorous method. So obviously that review is known as systematic literature, right? when you are doing a traditional, so your review content and your article search, your current knowledge bases access act, what do you call this? Accessing the current knowledge bases, right? Are all based on the subjective interpretations, right? So basically, that depends, the way of conducting your review depend by person to person, right? So that is basically done based on the subjective way of right? So traditional reviews are not reliable. Sometimes not in a good quality, right? But systematic literature reviews are high quality and follows a rigorous method and the objectivity rather than subjectivity, because there are frameworks to follow. No one can follow, use their own ways of doing reviews. So all of us have to follow a standard framework, standard guidelines are there, and principles are there. So we need to follow all these, right? So obviously this method is a consistent method. So we need to maintain the consistency. So in order to maintain the rigorous nature of this method, so basically there are guidelines, frameworks, and principles. So all of them need to be used in doing this, right? So systematic literature review is nowadays highly, as I told you at the beginning, influenced by the technologies. There are so many software coming and emerging to support this, and with that, researchers are highly interested in doing this kind of research than subjective traditional reviews. And so when you do a research study on this and send for a journal for the publication, the acceptance rate at the desk review level is very high, because this method eliminates the biasness and subjectivity. So which because it increases the objectivity and the science. So that's why most of the journal editors accept these kind of research outputs. So therefore, I'm recommending you to follow this method for your next research. I will help you to do that. So then what is systematic literature review? Systematic literature review is a review, kind of a review of a clearly formulated research question that uses a systematic and explicit methods to identify, select, critically appraise relevant research, and to collect and analyze data from studies that are included in the review. So basically, we need to follow a systematic methodologies to identify the article. We need to follow the systematic methodologies to select the articles, identify, select, and appraise or review, in other words, right? So we are supposed to systematically identify the relevant knowledge bases. Uh, we are systematically supposed to select the relevant knowledge bases, and we are supposed to critically appraise or critically review them in the included study, and uh, analyze results and all their findings, right? So that's what we need to do. Basically, identifying, selecting, and reviewing and reporting the results need to be done with the systematic methodology, with the scientific techniques, right? And sometimes we use statistical methodologies. When you are using statistical methodologies for reviewing, basically there is another terminology that is called meta-analysis, right? But I'm not going to focus on meta-analysis. The advanced version of systematic literature reviews are the meta-analysis, right? The meta-analysis are not going to focus today, but I'm basically giving how to conduct a systematic literature review, basically, right? So for the systematic literature reviews, we follow 8-step process. Uh, I will tell you briefly how to do each step today, right? So basically, those 8 steps are further mainly divided into 3 main steps. So basically, we are supposed to plan the review, and once the review is planned, then we are supposed to conduct the review. Then finally, after conducting it, so we have results. Those results need to be reported, right? So that's the basic 3 steps. So SLR consists of basically 3 steps. So those 3 steps are further elaborated in 8 steps, right? So now then how you start with your study? Systematic literature review. So you must have a problem, right? Problem. So that may be your empirical research study problem, right? So that may be your empirical research study problem, right? So that you are going to do for your PhD or maybe for your masters, right? So there may be different problems. Now, in a systematic literature review, as I told, basically you are supposed to identify the gaps relating to the problem, right? So in a problem, uh, normally you need to highlight the reality plus the gaps, right? Reality is the current problem, the evidences to the problem, so that the problem. So you need to provide evidences that the problem is a problem, right? So you need to provide more evidences that the phenomena is a problem, right? So that's coming from the, and also when it comes to the knowledge bases, as I told you, so there may be gaps, right? So reality has been a problem. So without having proper solutions in the knowledge bases, right? Without having proper solutions in the knowledge bases for the means a gap. Who means gaps? Means a gap. There are so many gaps, right? So then you need to highlight those gaps in the problem statement. So therefore, basically, problem statement basically consists of the reality and the gaps, right? So reality, as I told you, reality basically you can simply provide the evidences from the reality, right? And how gaps can be given, how the gaps can be highlighted from the systematic literature review. So from the review of existing literature. So as we are doing now systematic literature review, so you are supposed to identify the gaps from the systematic literature reviews. Right. For example, this is a model. For example, this is the kind of a model uh, someone has created for his research. So dependent variable is the employee engagement, and the independent variable is changing gender stereotypes. And the we have moderator variable, work family conflict, and the mediating variable is the work family conflict, and the moderating variable is the this one, perceived desirability for disruptive technologies, right? So this is a model. So this model has been developed by a researcher to justify a problem, right? So problem is this. For example, if you take employee engagement, normally the dependent variable is denoted, the problem is denoted by the dependent variable normally, right? So problem is, when it comes to the Sri Lankan context, the employee engagement is employee engagement for Sri Lanka is only 27% for the last year, right? Employee engagement. So that reveals the problem, right? That the employee engagement is a problem to Sri Lanka, because only we are having, out of the total working populations, we are we have engaged in only 27% of engaged employees, right? Which means that out of the 100, nearly 73% are totally disengaged from percent. 73% of working populations are totally disengaged from their jobs, which means that they are physically in, but mentally out from their jobs, which means that they are not really happy with their job, not committed to their jobs. They are really not absorbed in, or in other words, involved in their jobs, which means that innovations maybe only 27%, their commitments only 27%, their happiness towards their jobs, their satisfactions towards their jobs is only 27%, right? So that is, but they are taking salaries, right? So that organizations and the country, because they are taking salaries, but they are not properly giving their maximum contributions to the organizations, right? So that's the problem. It's only 27% according to the Gallup International Report. So that's the problem. So that is reality, right? So the 27% is more than enough to justify the reality, right? So that is the reality. Then, so now, when it comes to the last 10 years, the employee engagement statistics in the last 10 years, when it comes to 2020, 2017, we had nearly 37% employee engagement, right? Now, we are in the 2023, has decreased by 10%. Now 27. 37 was in 2017, right? But now 10% lost, decreased by 10% in 2020, right? So now earlier 37, now 27. So it means that there is a decreasing trend. Still, when you go further, so this trend is increasing, which means that the employee engagement will be reduced further. So then again, so this trend analysis reveals that the problem is severe. That is again coming from the reality. So those information more than enough to reveal or to emphasize the reality, right? So this is prevailing. So employee engagement is prevailing because there are no solutions. Now you need to find out the solutions from the literature, right? So then, so what these researchers have suggested that the gender stereotype is a cause for employee engagement. But gender stereotype, the positive sign indicates that once the gender stereotypes of the working population, gender stereotype change of working population results to increase the employee engagement. But when the gender stereotype increases, what happens is normally in the reality, work-family conflicts. There are so many evidences that once the gender stereotype change, that results to increase the work-family conflict. So that once the work-family conflict is there, to decrease the employee engagement, right? So there are some theories highlighting that, but no one has addressed these variables to predict the employee engagement. Right? So then how you prove that? So I said no one has addressed these variables predicting employee engagement. Right? How you can prove that? By a simply a systematic literature. So because no one has proved that these variables have been determinant for employee engagement, because there are theoretical arguments through deduction, deductive reasoning. So there may be some theories, and so with the deduction of theoretical arguments, we can simply predict that gender positively impacts the employee engagement, and work-family conflicts negatively impact employee engagement. But there are no empirical evidence. But there are no empirical evidences. So no empirical evidences means that there are gaps. So how do you make sure that there are no empirical evidences? Reviewing the existing literature, right? For example, we did a three systematic literature reviews for the gender stereotype change and tried to understand whether any of these studies found that the employee is an outcome for the changing gender stereotype, and found that in these studies no research has been addressed these two variables in their studies. And these are the publications. For example, I can show you. Right, so gender stereotype change outcomes, the systematic literature review. So this is a publication done by me, and you can go through the article, and this article highlights that basically outcomes, because my main focus is to find out the outcomes, because in this model my focus was to find out whether the employee engagement outcome. Right? In order to understand, in order to identify that whether the employee engagement is an outcome for the employee changing gender stereotypes, then I did a systematic literature review of outcomes of changing gender stereotypes. Then I reviewed all the outcomes resulting from changing gender stereotypes. Right? I took nearly more than 1,000 articles, right? So published during last 50 years. Because gender stereotype change started from around 1970s, mostly from different countries around the globe. Because with the introduction of women in employment program by the UN, right? So gender stereotype change resulted to gender stereotype resulted to change with the introduction of the women in employment programs by the UN. So now around 1970s, the gender stereotype change came into the discussion around 1970s. So then the people began to research on this around 1970s. And so gender stereotype started to change around 1970s. Right? So then I took, with that background, I took the studies published from 1970 up to 2020. Right? So which means that last 50 years research was taken into consideration and taken into the review, and systematically downloaded the articles published during the last 50 years, stereotype change, and analyzed those articles using software. Right? And found that no studies have been addressed the employee engagement as an outcome from the gender stereotype change. And there are some other studies as well. 3 studies conducted relating to this. And you can just click on this and find out how this has and the logic behind these, right, articles. So basically, my intention was to identify whether the employee engagement is an outcome from the changing gender stereotypes. So similarly, I did another research on work-family conflict, similar study on work-family conflict to determine, to identify whether there are any study addressed the changing gender stereotype as an antecedent or a factor for a work-family conflict, or to determine, to understand, to identify whether employee engagement is an outcome from the work-family conflict. And identified that no study have addressed that whether changing gender stereotype or a employee engagement as an antecedent or an outcome from work-family conflict, right? So, and similar studies conducted for this one, and to understand whether this variable as a moderator to this relationship, and found out no studies have been addressed this variable to this relationship. And so simply based on all these studies, I was able to identify gaps into this model. This kind of a model, in other words, this kind of a model has not been addressed by elsewhere in the world so far, right? So then all these results of these studies were combined and wrote a conceptual paper highlighting this concept with all these results. So simply with this kind of a model, and there is another publication coming, and which has been already accepted, and that is in print. And I did another systematic literature review for employee engagement, and identified that these variables are have not been addressed as determinants for employee engagement, right? So simply all these results published in those studies were combined in a conceptual framework like this and published in a separate article. And so this is a conceptual paper, so which highlights this concept and emphasize there are gaps, right? And so by taking the idea of this, and simply you can test, you can design your empirical study that need to be empirically tested that you proposed in this article, right? So that's the logical sequence of doing research. So basically you need to do a systematic literature review for each and every variable. And so your concept can be, your concept paper would maybe the conceptualization, the conceptual framework of your research can be justified by systematic literature reviews like this. And finally, conceptual can be developed based on the findings of these systematic literature reviews and do another publication. And based on that publication, you can simply design your literature review second chapter of your PhD thesis, for example, of your empirical research project, right? So this is how this concept is justified in your problem statement, right? So, for example, changing gender stereotype, this table can be put in the problem statement. So to reveal the gaps, for example, as I told you, in the problem statement, you need to focus on the reality and the gaps, right? So see, for these gaps, you can simply draw this table, right? For the gender stereotype change, the refined articles were 75, and those were published like this, right? So those three publications highlighted here, along with some conference papers. And work-family conflict, for the work-family conflict, 420 articles were taken and published, right? So this is that article. And so that article, right? And perceived desirability, 62 articles, and there are 2 publications with this. And employee engagement, 260 articles were taken, and publication is this. And so what gaps these studies highlighted? The main gap is knowledge gap. Organization and social roles create negative impacts on employee engagement. By providing technology resources, they can be minimized, right? So this is the, because this particular conceptual framework creates this knowledge, right? So here simply means that organization and social roles. So because this is an organization role conflict theory, work family conflict is supported by organization role conflict theory. And this is social theory, social role theory. The roles derived from the society and roles derived from the family and the work, right, creates the loss of employee engagement. Loss means that reduction of employee engagement. Then reduction of employee engagement can be increased by providing more technology resources towards the employee. Right? So that was the finding. Right? So social roles, organization, when the social roles are interacted with the work roles or the organization roles, that results to reduce the employee engagement. And reduction of employee engagement can be increased by providing more technology resources based on the demand resource model, right? Job demand resource model, right? So job demand resource model simply means that theory suggests that when the organization provide more resources to the demands of the employee jobs, obviously employee engagement can be increased. That's basically highlight in the job demand resource model, right? So there are three theories combined into this model. This is social role theory, and this is organization role conflict theory. This is job demand resource model. So all theories combined into a one model and develop a one theory, right? So based on the empirical, based on the evidences, right? So nearly more than 1,000 articles were taken for all these, right? So this is the theoretical gap. Knowledge gap is this, right? This kind of a knowledge is no longer existent, right? And theory, there are no theory relating to this, right? So because no holistic model found combining organizational role theory, that is role conflict theory, Biddle 1986 and Kahn's 1964, that is, they are the people who developed this organizational role theory and the social role theory, right? So no holistic model found combining organization, social role theory, and the job demand resource model, right? So then by combining all these three theories, new knowledge created. So that's the theoretical, right? No one has addressed these theories into a one holistic model and empirical gap. So the proposed model has not been empirically investigated and contextual gap. So this study was conducted in Sri Lanka, and none of the other countries have conducted this study. Not only the Sri Lanka, but also other countries have not conducted this kind of a research. So there are contextual gaps, right? So these are the logical way of presenting your problem, and no one with this, right? So you are really you can really defend with your problem, and no one can challenge to your problem state, because everything done by scientific evidence and in a systematic way, right? So now how systematic literature review can be done? Basically, for each and every variable for your model, in your model, you can do a simple systematic literature review and find out whether there are these kind of gaps, and you can present all these gaps problem statement for your empirical study, right? So use these concepts to your model and do the same thing to your model as well, right? So how you can do that? For example, let's suppose that your variable is this one. For example, you have independent variable and dependent variable x and y, right? You need to conduct an SLR for x variable and for another SLR for y variable, right? How you can do that and try to understand whether there are gaps, those type of gaps, knowledge gap, theoretical gap, empirical gap, and contextual gap, right? So if there are gaps you can proceed with this, but if you can't find any gap, you can't do this research, because if you can't find any gap, right? Any gap, which means that there are knowledge, sorry, there are knowledge existing in the knowledge base, right? Doing the same thing for the existing knowledge is not is useless, because having a knowledge, doing a research on the same knowledge is useless, right? So find out a gap, and in order to fill that gap, you need to do your research, right? So that must be justified in your research problem, right? So for that, let's say for the X variable, you are going to conduct a systematic literature review, right? So for that, you need to develop a protocol. Before conducting a literature review, you develop a protocol. As when you go to the model, right? Here, the first step is the problem statement, right? Problem statement for this, because you are doing a research in the sense that for the systematic literature review, you are doing a research, right? Literature review research. For that, you need to formulate a research problem. For example, normally as you are going to find out a particular variable, so simply you can develop a research question like what are the gaps, what are the gaps prevailing on let's say X variable. And you have or maybe in other words, you can mention the research question as what are the common knowledge, right? What are the common knowledge prevailing X variable? Once you can identify the common knowledge, obviously in return you can identify the gaps, because there are softwares developed. You can simply identify the commonly investigated areas and the gaps on that investigations, right? So simply you can formulate the problem like that. And once the problem statement is developed, then simply you can develop a review protocol, right? So review is like this. Simply, protocol is a kind of a proposal, similar to the proposal, right? So, so this is the proposal. So proposal is reflected by means of a table here. Article selection method, I will tell you how, what is the Prisma guidelines. And let's say you are going to conduct a research study on workplace romance. Since HRM, I'm taking always HRM related titles and research teams, research titles. Let's take workplace romance, for example, right? So basically you can search, you are supposed to search the publications or research studies on workplace romance. So then what are the keywords, search strings in the databases? So what do you call this? Google Scholar. So basically, workplace romance, other search strings, and inclusion criteria. So what are the criteria that by which you can include the articles and by which you can exclude the articles, right? So year range, you are taking the year range articles for the workplace romance publications or research publications published during 1991 and 2023, right? So you must have a clear justification for the selection of year range. As I told you, for the last for this one, last 50 years, from 1970 to 2022. The main justification for selecting this year was that the gender stereotype change started around these years because of the United Nations women empowerment programs, right? So there are strong citations to justify this. With this, then I selected this year and afterward. Otherwise, when you select a particular year range, journals or journal reviewers may ask why you specifically focus on this year range. Then for that, you must have a clear justification to select justification for that, right? So selecting a year range as an inclusion criteria, and subject area all, because there are several databases, there are articles, research publication by means of a different subject areas. Let's say any research study conducted in management or accounting. So that is categorized in management and under the management and accounting and marketing. Any research study conducted in the engineering context, so that research article is categorized under the engineering context. And likewise, right? So there are too many subject areas under which the research publications have been categorized. Then we took, for example, we decided to take for this research all the publications relating to the workplace romance in all subject areas, right? Were included in this research. And language of publication is the English. Understand only English, other languages we can't understand. So therefore, we consider to take all the publications published in English language. And the keywords basically workplace romance, right? And the source types are the publications. The source, basically the research is published under which source. For example, if you take there are research studies published in journals, in newspapers, published in web posts, published in reports, published in blog posts, right? So there are so many sources under which research can be published, research outputs can be published. We decided to take academic journals, right? We decided to take the research studies published in academic journals. Why we are taking academic journals? For each and every criteria, inclusion criteria that you are going to use must have a clear justification for using that kind of a inclusion criteria, right? So you must have a clear justification for each and every inclusion criteria, why you used this kind of a to include the article, right? Clear justifications must be there, right? So why academic journals are selected? Because academic journals ensure the quality of the research inputs. Because when you go to the what you call this, the other sources like maybe conferences, sometimes all the conferences may not publish high quality research outputs. Sometimes there are uh, uh, so normally they publish low quality research publications. So how you ensure that? But when you go to the index journals, for example, so they ensure the high quality outputs, right? When you please remember, you need to make sure to input high quality raw data, right? So because when you input garbage, get the garbage out. When you input high quality data, you get the high quality out, right? So your task is to improve the quality of your research outputs. So that you need to input the high quality data. High quality data in the sense that high quality articles need to be selected. Because that is why I have selected only 75 articles published in the last 50 years. See, when the initial search was done in the databases, I got nearly 3,000 articles. Then I screened many articles, a lot, and found out refined only 75 articles. Those 75 articles are high quality articles, right? See, so when I search this one, because this is a highly researched area, nearly 5,000 more than 5,000 articles generated uh, when I searched the literature first. Then I subjected to screen the articles several times, several stages, and finally got these 420 articles. Right. So likewise, you can initially download the articles once the search screen or search key terms, keywords were entered into the initially retrieved list of articles, maybe more than what we expect. Maybe thousands and thousands of articles might be generated. But your task is to refine the best high quality articles using inclusion criteria, right? Using inclusion criteria. That's why we use inclusion criteria, high quality inclusion criteria. And type of study, empirical, we are taking only the empirical studies and meta-analysis, because empirical, quantitative and meta-analysis, quantitative studies, simply what meta-analysis is the quantitative empirical, we have for the empirical studies, we have qualitative empirical studies and quantitative empirical studies. Right? We decided to take empirical quantitative studies and meta-analysis results on meta-analysis studies only, because they produce high quality reliable data. That's because we made sure to input high quality reliable data to get quality out. Please remember, when you input the garbage, you will get the garbage out, right? So to avoid that, you need to input high quality data, high quality research outputs, right? And the methodological quality, in order to determine whether a particular article is a high quality one, simply you can go refer the methodology section of each and every article and find out, check their methodology, and from the itself we can determine whether the research has been conducted in a good way or bad way, right? So the quality of the article is determined based on the methodological quality. So for that, we use different criteria, different assessments are there, and you can find those different assessments. And in this study, we use the quantitative research studies, use quantitative studies. Research studies which have used the quantitative method were decided to select. We were decided to include for this review. And the databases, basically, there are so many databases for this research. Now I am going to tell you how to tell. I'm going to tell how to use Google only, right? There are some other databases are there, but with this limited time, I believe no time to conduct all this, but I will tell you how to use Google, right? So you can simply mention in the protocol that you are going to protocol, what are the databases that you are going to use to retrieve these articles. And the key analysis method is a keyword concurrence analysis. I will tell you about this later on. And the reporting structure is the Prisma guidelines. And the project timetable, you can simply include a Gantt chart. And search strings are the workplace Romans. Please remember to put these things asterisk marks, colon mark, quotation mark, to take the entire phrase as a one term, right? So this is the terminology typed in the database. And screening, who did the screening? Authors independently, or maybe independent reviewers. If there are any, let's say there is only one author for a particular research study, simply in order to avoid the biasness, author's peer reviewer or author's peer can be asked to help for the selection, article screening, right? So please remember, article screening using the inclusion criteria can be done, the reviewers or maybe author and the peer reviewer independently. And finally, cross-check can cross-check how many articles included by the each and every uh, uh, author or the reviewer, right? So then finally come to an agreement whether a particular article is rejected or included if there are any disagreement about the inclusion or exclusion, right? So that need to be the biases, right? So these are the inclusion criteria and framework. Normally, as I told you in this, basically, right? As I did show, Prisma guidelines. So the Prisma is the preferred reporting items for systematic and meta-analysis. Preferred reporting items for systematic and meta-analysis is a kind of an organization, so which recommends, which provide guidelines for systematic literature. This is a Canadian organization, internationally recognized organization, systematic literature reviews. They are providing guidelines and protocols for, right? So when you do it, there are some other guidelines, but commonly accepted guideline is the Prisma, right? So they provide 27 items for reporting your findings and how to conduct the selection of articles, how to perform the systematic literature review conducting stage, how to select, how to plan, how to select, how to conduct, and how to report. The entire process is backed by the Prisma guidelines. They are given some guidelines for each step, right? So that's why we need to use the Prisma guideline. Article selection methods, normally articles are retrieved using the Prisma guidelines, and the articles, all these inclusion criteria and these protocol designing comply with the Prisma guidelines. And finally, that what you call this, the report writing, the structure of your report, in other words, need to be followed with the Prisma guidelines. So in other words, structure of the report must be consistent with the Prisma guidelines. So there are guidelines to how to prepare your article, how to structure your article, right? So then framework is that Prisma, because the main recommendation or the main strong citations are there to support this. Basically, this means that the Prisma is highly recommended for systematic literature reviews, right? So there are strong citations for this because we are using Prisma because it is recommended for SLR. Right. So this is the Prisma framework for article selection. You can simply, because this is the standard format of how articles were retrieved and how duplicates were removed, and how automatically articles were screened using the database options, and how articles are manually excluded, and how methodological quality was assessed, and how many articles excluded at each stage needed to be revealed in this particular diagram, in this particular figure, right? So there are 3 steps need to be followed at the selection and screening, right? And this must be reported in the report. And there are, you can find out so many other, I have given so many examples published in my articles. For example, for this, I have used at the identification 450 articles identified in Scopus database. And through automatic screening options, these unwanted articles were rejected in review and articles screened, and finally 118 articles were included in the review. So for the review, finally, these are the high quality articles, and the rejections were based on these reasons, and these reasons have been provided with strong justifications to exclude those articles, right? These other studies, for example, there are 11 review studies, there are book chapters, there are 7 conference papers, right? So then in the in the text, in the
Dr. Priyashantha, I think we lost the connection. Looks like we cannot hear you.
Sorry, I got the connection. Now I believe I can hear you.
Yes, Dr. Prashant.
Right. Is it visible now?
Yes.
Right. So now I will show you how to do these practical things, how to do discuss so far in a practical way, right? That I'll go to the Google first. For that, I have to share the screen. First, we need to go to the Google Scholar. And you need to log into the Google Scholar with your Google ID and just type workplace Romans, right? Simply you can type workplace Romans, right? So now you have nearly it's workplace Romans. Now you get 265,000 results, right? Now you can simply, because in this 2065 results, sometimes there are articles, there are items which has the title workplace or maybe Romans, right? So these two words have taken separately. To avoid that, you can simply uh, put as quotation marks. Then the Google search only the items which has the title or which has the word workplace Romans in those items. Maybe those items, the content that this keyword may be in the title or maybe in the abstract or maybe in the conclusion, right? Wherever in an article, right? Simply. So once you click this one, then only that 265,000 results were refined into further screen down to workplace down to 4,420 results, right? So now you can simply record this for this. Simply you can put here, right? Google Scholar. Nearly you can simply say 265,000. Initially, you get these results through automatic options. Nearly, you would simply need to minus 1,420 is equal to this amount need to be mentioned here, right? Excluded automatically, right? So these, whatever the thing you are doing, need to be reported here in the screening, right? So then and now you can further reduce this number using further screening options, right? Right. Now, here you can, you need to put the workplace Romans here, not here, not in this cell, not in this bar. You simply need to put the workplace Romans, the keywords in this, the second bar. right? You don't want to put the asterisk mark here, not the asterisk or the quotation mark here, because because as this, as you can see, the word we are taking, the Google is taking the entire phrase with the exact phrase button, the search bar, you can simply put this workplace romance in this bar, right? And yes, then you can simply check this button, because you are searching only not in the anywhere, not this workplace romance in anywhere in the article. You are supposed to uh, check this button, which means that you are taking only the workplace romance research publications which are reflected, these keywords are reflected in the title of the article, right? And you can simply put the year range. Let's say you are taking only the publications which are published after 2015 to 2020, right? So now see how many articles are there. Now you get 40 articles. This much is more than enough for a systematic literature review. Now what you can do is you need to export all these results into your reference manager, right? So for that, as I told you, you need to use Mendeley reference manager. So this is the Mendeley software, and you need to open that. And Mendeley offline software is this one, and Mendeley web browser connector is this one. So these things, how these things are installed into your computer is explained by these videos that I have shown you at the beginning, right? So then you need to click this one. Once this is clicked, right? So then you will get this type of window, and you need to click this one, view library. And once that is clicked, then you will get the online version of your reference management software. Mendeley's online version is given, right? So this is the offline version of this. Online version is this one, right? So now you can simply so once that is clicked, then you will get this type of a window. Then in that you can select the relevant folder that you want to export these results into, right? So I have selected this one because this is already created. If you want, you can create another file. For example, add new. You can press the add new. Once this is clicked, then you can simply add a file or add a folder, or simply you can go here and create a folder, test, test, say 2. Then press enter, then automatically the folder is there. Now you can select this one, right? So once this is select, after selecting this one, you can simply minimize it. Sorry, you can simply select this one, this folder, this tab, and again click this one, and that is minimized. It has already been minimized. Need to refresh several times. If this is not coming, then they go to this button and refresh it, right? So then automatically this window is appeared. Now you can select for example, the folder that you created. Select this one and uncheck this one, right? select this one. Now you can add, select all, then add. Then automatically all the list, the items in this list, all the items in this list are exported into this folder in the reference manager, right? Please remember, since this particular keyword has only 40 results, so these 40 results are displayed in two pages, right? So page 1, maximum 20 items per page have been selected. There are, you can increase or decrease the number by using this option, settings. So because this option is there, you can, because these two options are there, 10 results per page and 20 results per page. I have enabled this one, 20 results per page. Then once this is clicked, then obviously you get 20 results per page, right? Otherwise 10 results per page. All these 20 results are exported at once. And when you have 40 items, then 2 pages are there. So for the second page, you need to click this one and the same thing repeated, right? Same thing repeated twice, right? So I have done for you that one earlier. So for example, this is the, let's assume that this is the file. Right. So we exported this one. Let's say the previously exported items are in this folder, right? So this is the folder test2, right? So the items have been already imported. Now what we need to do, we can select all. We can select all and sorry, we can go to the offline version. So this is the offline version. So online and offline version is already have been already synchronized, updating in real time. So we have the test2 folder in the offline version, and you can see the same version here in the online version as well. Gupta, right? So you can proceedings, the second item, and proceedings, the second item. Right? So the same result appeared in this question as well. Now what you can do is you can right click on it and simply using the uh, keyboard keys, Control A, you can simply press the Control A to select all the items, then right click on it and update. Right. So once that is updating key is entered, then automatically all these things are being updated. Right. So once that is done, you can simply before exporting this, and you can manually go through each item. Right. Because each item you can simply go to the abstract and check whether the keywords have been already detected, right? For each and every item, you need to check. If there is no, sometimes, since this is a technological thing, sometimes abstract or maybe sometimes there are missing information. So in that case, you can directly go to the article by clicking this link and manually copy the relevant content and fill this. Please try to make sure whether that, because these two things, abstract and the keywords, are most important. Check each and every abstract and keywords in each item with any missing information, right? So if the abstract keywords are missing, go to the manually go to the relevant website by clicking for the relevant article by clicking this link and copy the abstract and the keywords and paste here, right? So that must be done. Otherwise, the results may be varied. And also by using now the next step is by using the inclusion criteria. Again, you need to go through. In this case, you see keywords are missing, abstract is missing, right? So then in that case, you directly go to the website, this site, by clicking this item and go to the website and copy the relevant information and paste it, right? And just after doing that, then you can go through each abstract and keywords and you can determine whether particular inclusion criteria or exclusion criteria are met. If the exclusion criteria are met, you can simply exclude this article. You can determine whether particular this item is included for the review or excluded. So this is again a part of screening, right? So manually screening is there. As you can see this excluded manually. So once the automatic screening is done, you can do the screening manually by simply going through each and every abstract and keywords and against with the inclusion criteria, right? Simply you can check the year range, you can check subject, you can check the methodological quality and manually, right? So then after that, then you can decide whether after doing that, you can decide, you can simply export, right? So suppose that you have done all these things, screening, manually screening, automatic screening and manual screening done. So then suppose you have already done all these steps and so these are the finally retained articles. Now what you can do is select all, again, select all, right click on it and export, right? Press the export button and select, you can rename it as let's say workplace romance and use this file format, RIS format, right? RIS format and save it. I have saved you before. And this is the file, right? So WR workplace romance manually from Google Scope RIS. And this is the file. And this one need to be entered into the software that we are going to use. So what software we are going to use? So we have a very good software for systematic literature review called Weaver. And this is a very simple software, freely available. You need to perform 2 steps to download and install, basically to install the software into your computer. There is a 2-step process. Simply, you can download and hit the exe button, then automatically the software is installed into your computer. So this is the interface of the software, and using this, you can using the create button. You need to check the second button here, and we are using the reference manager files. Press next, an RIS file. Now you can import the RIS file from the relevant destination. It is in this folder. Press next, and we can use the co-occurrence because we are using the keyword co-occurrence analysis, right? We are using the keywords for analysis because keywords denote a content of an article. Please remember, keywords denote the content of an article. So that's why we are using keywords, because from keywords we can identify what has been addressed and what has not been addressed, right? So keyword co-occurrence analysis, this analysis is for keyword co-occurrence analysis, right? So now we can use, there are 109 keywords in this 40 article list, 40 articles that we included for our review. So there are nearly 109 keywords. More than 3 occurrences. The keywords which have occurred in articles more than 3 times. How many keywords? There are 3 keywords. Right? We can increase or decrease. 2-time occurrences, 13 keywords are there. 1-time occurrences, 1-time occurrence, 109 articles. 2-time occurrences, 13, and 3-time occurrences, 3. Right? So there are no other keywords more than that. Right? So we can use all the keywords. Right? For example, you can check this one, which means that to address the common, to find out the commonly investigated areas, you can take the maximum number of occurrences. Let's say 5 and above occurrences, which means that 5 times and above occurrences of keywords in articles. 5 times in the sense that same articles has been investigated 5 times. Means that commonly investigated area, right? So then simply, in other words, we can. So that's up to the researcher to decide which occurrences are taken for the investigation. In this case, I'm taking all the keywords, right? So here, now these are the keywords. You can exclude or exclude the keywords that you don't want to include. For example, there are sometimes policy, or maybe sometimes country names are there. Policy, similar words are there, plurals are there, right? So those can be eliminated. Pakistan no needed because we are investigating the, let's say, workplace romance, right? So in that case, we are going to find our main research question is to find out what are the common areas addressed and what are the gaps prevailing, right? Knowledge gaps. In this case, Pakistan is not needed, right? So ICT, maybe unwanted keywords are there. Sometimes methodological informations are highlighted in the keywords. So you can exclude unwanted keywords, right? Suppose these are the keywords that we want to include and finalize, right? So this is the network. The network says a lot on the investigations of workplace romance, right? So this network, these lines connecting each node reveals the relationship between these 2 keywords. For example, if you take this one, the workplace romance is the main keyword that we investigated. Uh, let's take this one. Sexual interactions sexual interactions, right? So sexual interaction and the workplace romance, these 2 words, 2 keywords have a connection. So maybe sometimes sexual interactions may be an independent variable or a dependent variable to the workplace, right? So when you go to this one, sexual harassment has a connection with the, so this is connected with this line, right? So which means that sexual harassment has a connection with the workplace romance, which means that sexual harassment may be a determinant or an outcome or a mediator or a moderator to the workplace romance, right? So you need to find out the relevant article, go to the relevant article, and you need to find out the main finding of this connection related to this connection, right? And need to be summarized in the article. Right. So basically, this is the connection and how we can find the commonly investigated areas and the gaps relating to this model. Right. So by going to this one, simply you can change the colors, and this says something. Right. The red color indicates a frequent investigations. This color, red color, indicates the frequent investigations. So which means that workplace has been more frequently investigated. Marital satisfaction, formation factors, love contracts, organizational justice, and this one, business administration, organizational behavior. So these are in red color. So this is purely in red color, but here you can say yellowish red is there, which means that yellow related red is the moderately investigated area. the green color indicates the least areas of maybe where there are very few studies relating to this employee engagement, employee performance, workplace romance. And when you go to this one, workplace romance and employee performance, workplace romance and employee performance, there may be a connection. Maybe sometimes when there is a workplace romance, employee performance can be increased, maybe an outcome. So we need to just go to this particular article and find out whether the employee performance is an outcome of workplace romance, right? So then this has been investigated very infrequently, which means that very limited studies are there because this is denoted in green color. So green color, according to this developer of this particular software, they say that the green color, a particular keyword located in a green node, indicates a less frequent investigation, which means that very limited research studies are there. And if a particular keyword located in a blue background, which means that there are no studies have been conducted. Since we have taken one time and above studies, so maybe sometimes there should be one study for each, because that's why there are no keywords located in the blue background, which means that zero occurrences, right? So there are no, because we took only one and above, right? So then that's why, so maybe sometimes when you go to this one, you can simply, when you click this one, here you can see that on this area, right? So when you click this one, see this one, occurrences 1, total strength 4, links 4, and cluster. This keyword has been clustered in the cluster 12, right? So there are 4 links connecting the employee engagement, employee performance, and the occurrence is only 1, right? One occurrence is there, which means that only one investigations are there, which means that in the world there is only one investigation on the connection between the workplace romance and the performance. So can you generalize this finding? Simply you can't with one study finding. So simply then workplace romance and the connection between workplace romance and employee performance is very limited, so which reveals a gap on this area. So simply you can put this area has a gap, knowledge gap, because only one study has been conducted, right? So by looking at this, simply you can understand, identify the mostly frequently investigated research areas and least investigated research areas, right? So that's how you can interpret these results. Now, the next step is to structure the article, right? Structure your findings. So basically, so these are the two outputs co-occurrence analysis. This is the density visualization map, and this is the keyword co-occurrence analysis map, right? So now I forgot one thing, tell you in this. When you go to this, when you click this button, middle button, then number of keywords, number of clusters created are shown, right? So here number 1, there are 13 items, this particular in red color, right? So normally the cluster 1 is the red color one, right? So this particular red cluster, according to this categorization or cluster, particular cluster denotes a particular content normally. So when, according to the occurrences, there is a mathematical reasoning behind this. Cluster denotes a particular content, right? So what is the logic behind this? Normally, according to the mathematics, as you can remember, there is an exploratory factor analysis. When you, in the regression, normally factor analysis, when you use the SPSS, we have exploratory factor analysis. The logic behind the logic behind this particular cluster, making clusters, is the exploratory factor analysis, right? So according to the occurrences of the keywords, these keywords have been clustered into particular clusters based on the exploratory fact analysis, right? So then this particular cluster denotes a particular content, right? By looking at this, the findings of each and every related keywords clustered into one particular cluster, you can go to the relevant articles and you can simply write about the findings uh, relating to this cluster, and find out a common theme relating to this cluster, right? So then cluster denotes a common theme, right? So as there are 17 clusters, simply you can conclude that the workplace romance research have been addressed only 17 themes. Now your task is to identify the what uh, what theme denotes what theme is denoted by each cluster, which means that workplace romance highlights only 17 themes uh, based on the current literature. So now your task is to identify what are those 17 themes. For that, you need to go to the individual articles by simply checking all these articles in the reference manager and manually go to read the abstracts of each and every article and relate each findings, and write each findings relating to each keyword, and those keywords need to be categorized into a cluster, right? For example, let's take this one. Right, for example, this one. Now you need to draw this kind of a table, and red cluster, at this point, you can't determine the theme for a cluster, and as the software categorized different clusters, these are the keywords, right? Environmental knowledge, ethical leadership, green behavior, green values, green human resource management, all these are categorized into particular cluster. Now your task is to identify the relevant findings relating to each keyword, and need to make a small paragraph relating to each keyword, right? So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 keywords here in this cluster, right? So which you are supposed to create 5 paragraphs and read several times those paragraphs and try to understand try to create a common theme for all these 5 paragraphs, right? For example, I have created 5 paragraphs, and find out the main findings relating to each keyword, and created those 5 paragraphs and read the 5 paragraphs and understood that each study uh, address, because each study has a common theme, representing a common theme. So that common theme is the green psychological climate. Environmental knowledge is a psychological thing. Ethical kind of a thing is a psychological thing. Behavior is resulted from a psychological thing. Green value is a psychological thing, right? Uh, so green human resource management is the common terminology. So that has been again categorized into this particular cluster. Since this the research is about green human resource management, no need to find out the findings related to this one. This is the common terminology that we search, right? So relating to all these keyword, the findings relating to all these keywords highlight a psychological kind of a thing. So that's why I put the theme as the green psychological climate, right? So your task is to determine, as you are an expert of the research area, about the research area, your task is to determine the common theme based on the findings reported, right? So now let's say, for example, so this is the cluster, red cluster, and this cluster is highlighted in this, right? So now the cluster is green psychological climate. This cluster represents the green psychological climate. All these keywords have been categorized in the, or maybe located in a green background. So which means that this particular theme has been addressed very limitedly, right? So which means that there are gaps relating to this particular theme. So you can simply write about the gaps. For example, green psychological climate has not been addressed well, which means that there are gaps relating to the green psychological climate. So that's the main finding in your study, right? So that's how you can draw this kind of a table and uh, reveal the gaps, right? Reveal the gaps, right? Because the gaps are highlighted in separate articles like this, right? So you can simply, since I think I have taken more than 1 hour, now the time is already gone, and you can simply go through my articles that I have recommended. Then simply you can understand, as so if you are academics, I believe you will be able to understand how to by going through each and every article that I have recommended. Uh, Simply you can structure the articles, right? Structure your findings, or maybe how to write your manuscript based on these results, right? So I think, I believe, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, Dr. Prashant. I think the line was breaking up, but now it's okay.
All right. Okay. So I believe now you will be able to understand, since the time is already gone. Uh, so you can simply, by going through the articles that I have recommended, so you will be able to understand how to write, how to structure your manuscript. I think you have already gained within this short time period. You got an idea about this basic awareness on how to do this. But please remember, this knowledge is not enough. I think that the information that I provided with you may not be enough for doing a complete article, because there are so many other technical barriers may encounter while you are entering into the start writing this and start doing this. So you can contact me anytime through Mr. Sisita, and uh, there are there is an institution called IESSL, Institute of Applied Statisticians of Sri Lanka. I'm conducting the lectures for them, and they are organizing courses on this. There is a course on SLR conducted by me. You can join with that course, and most probably there is another course in end of September, so you can join if you need more information and awareness on this. But the things I talked about with you is more than enough as your academics, by doing a basic kind of a SLR. Right? If you encounter any problem, you can contact me anytime. And I invite you to collaborate with me for future studies. So I'm happy to help you and happy to collaborate with you. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Mr. Sisita, and the department and the faculty for giving me this opportunity to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Priyashantha. Actually, that was a wonderful session. As you know, now our university is a newly established university, and we have a lot of early career researchers in our university. So we are growing. At this stage, I think this knowledge is critical knowledge for us to grow and become an established university. So I think you have set up the background for those who were available today. And we are going to actually post this video on the recording in our university website as well. Then the others can also refer to this particular video and learn. We look forward to working with you in the future. And at this moment, I would like to invite our dean of the faculty of Indigenous Social Sciences and Management Studies, Dr. Kamalika Jayatilaka, to do the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Sisita. I hope you all can hear me. Yes?
Yes, audible.
Yes.
Right. So thank you very much, Dr. Priyashantha, for joining us this evening to deliver this webinar on a very important and very useful topic. So as I emphasize in each and every webinar that we organize as a faculty, we initiated this scholarly exchange program to inspire both our academics and our students, not only to broaden our intellectual horizons, but also to engage critically in some of the, most current debates, techniques, tools, topics to encourage research and generate new knowledge. In doing so, it is vital that we invite resource persons like yourself to engage in fruitful discussions and exchange knowledge to broaden our understandings and be inspired to do more scholarly work, publish and become good academics. So you have delivered an excellent presentation to fulfill exactly this by sharing knowledge on systematic literature reviews. Now, I personally learned a lot, Dr. Priyashantha. Being a qualitative researcher myself, I have always, relied on traditional research, literature reviews, more, narrative sort of literature review. So today, you actually, this very insightful presentation taught me a lot on how to do a systematic literature review. I think it makes our lives so much easier if we follow this. So thank you so much. And I hope you will be available for more sessions like this to develop a more discussion prone session in the future. So I won't take too much of your time. So finally, so as the Dean of the Faculty, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to you once again for your time and effort. And I hope you will be available for more sessions like this. Also, thank you, Mr. Sisita, Head of the Department of Management Studies, and your team for organizing such a wonderful session this evening. And also thank you everyone, everyone who has joined today. I know everyone is tired, but thank you everyone for joining in. I look forward to more, interesting and insightful sessions organized by the faculty. So thank you very much. Have a pleasant evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for all the participants. We'll meet, in another day with another interesting event, a session, a webinar. And Dr. Priyashantha, again, thank you so much for doing this for us. And we look forward to work with you in the future. Have a wonderful evening then.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Sisda and the faculty and the dean. And one more thing I forgot to tell you, if you want more knowledge on this, because there are so many videos uploaded into my YouTube channel, so you can watch them. That is freely available on systematic literature reviews and how to. There are so many other lectures on this methodology.
Sure. Yes, I will share the links with the faculty and all the other academics of our university. Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a good day and good night. Thank you so much.